The crucifixion happened to not only Emmanuel, it happened to his wife, the Magdalene. It happened to their children. It happened to his mother, his friends, his apostles. In other words, all of these people were crucified. To be crucified is to be ritualistically tortured and programmed. This is an attempt to break a person, especially people who the cult would rather have under their influence. From the Vatican's centuries of experience torturing people to death, they have found it's better for them to get opponents to join with them instead of killing them. Because when they kill people, this creates martyrs. And martyrs inspire other people to do what is right. While a broken person who sides with the enemy basically tells everyone else that siding with the enemy is the right thing to do. Or the only thing to do, which it isn't. Hold on 1 second, man, alright? Yeah, what? Yeah, in 5 minutes. I'm almost done. So to break a person is also known as crucifying someone, or to unjustly torture that person until their will is broken. So when this crucifixion ritual happens, it happens slightly differently for every person it happens to, but the results are often the same. The Vatican plants the target, then the cult leads them on this chase where the victim is stalked, tortured, and manipulated by the cult. So in the Bible, we had a depiction of Christ carrying his cross. First, he was beaten to the pulp. Then he's released from prison to go on this long walk and carry his cross, usually to the top of a hill, and then be nailed on it. And if you look at the artwork through the centuries depicting Christ carrying the cross, you'll see a consistent theme. The people around Christ are usually shown to be ugly, insane, or sadistically happy about the situation. Could it be that this is actually the cult tormenting him? In today's executions, usually most normal people are respectively quiet about the affair. Everyone usually remains quiet and orderly while they execute criminals. In other words, since they're about to kill somebody, screaming and going crazy on the criminal is kind of ridiculous when they are planning to systematically murder them. So we have JC, whose biggest crime besides being an outspoken critic of Rome and a revolutionary leader is healing the people on the Sabbath day. Now, does that really warrant such wrath from the would-be locals and everyday people, or is there something else going on there? Yes, this guy stood up against a demon cult who want to make him as insane and loveless as they all are. So this is symbolic of a stalking ritual, which is the big hobby and pastime at the Vatican along with the agency. They burn people, they crucify people, they torture people, and they stalk people until they get them to do what they want. So people get nailed to their crosses in all sorts of ways, and it's mostly centered around programming. Peter, he was tortured until he denied Christ. They tried to get the Magdalene to take another husband after dividing her and Emmanuel. They tortured her the same way they tortured Christ because the Magdalene was one of the female Christs. Now, since this whole breaking couples up and then breaking people's hearts is a big Illuminati or Vatican practice, I want to talk about this for a moment. There's this older movie that was French-Canadian, I believe, and it's called Eliza's Horoscope. They knew a few things about these rituals, so I recommend seeing this movie. But it's basically about a girl who meets a young man, and even though she falls in love with him and knows he is a good man, she is drawn to find another and goes on a hunt for the man of her horoscope. So she goes out on a few dates with some men who are rich, with some men who are good looking, but after she spends a little time with them, she notices they are plants, or they're not right in some way. Once she finally figures out who her true love is, which is the young man she's known all the time, she goes back to the little room he's rented and finds that he is now gone. He had waited for her for some time, but since she didn't come back, he decided that he couldn't wait forever for her. And since he is without his love, he is without his woman, he basically gets destructive. And he and some other guys decide to blow up a bridge or something in opposition to the government. Then in one of the final scenes, they show him charging up a hill in pain, and then an image of a solar disk, or a disk held in front of the sun. All this represents not only a crucifixion, but also an Illuminati ritual known as the Ritual of the Black Sun. So it's very sad, especially when Eliza returns to look for him, but only finds a note that says he couldn't wait, and he signs it with, "See you in the sun," which means see you in the crucifixion. So even though she wasn't sleeping with all these men, she was involved with this Illuminati or ritualistic process of turning a woman who is a Christ or with Christ into what they call a whore or a horse. Of course, the same thing happens to men as well. And what it means is somebody who gets broken and then guided around like a horse. They have lost their will to the cult's will. Therefore, they do as they are commanded to, or suggested by the cult, where they work, who they marry, who they hang out with, who controls their children. This will all be controlled by the cult once their will has been broken. If a man or woman is forced away from someone they truly love, they usually go through a series of failed relationships which breaks the human spirit down, and in the end they get handled by someone. And I think at this point all of you should understand where that programming leads. So this is their cross to bear, this process of manipulation and breaking them down into a shadow of their former selves. So where they were once Christs, they have now fallen. And this is why the Illuminati says Christ and Lucifer are the same person. So let's talk about the stalking ritual, which is a big part in this. In today's world, I've heard it referred to as peddling. And that is when the cult chases somebody who is being tortured and is attempting to get away from their attackers. So the target ends up moving or walking from place to place, but of course the cult will always stalk them. When someone is induced into a traumatic, painful, and panicked state, they will attempt to get away from the source of these terrible feelings. So instinctively, the target will begin a series of moving to a different city, moving to a different town, or simply walking a lot, trying to go to a place that might be comfortable for them. Of course, the cult will always stalk them. That is part of the fun games the Vatican plays with their diminished lives. So the target will often begin to hate people or attempt to get away from everyone. They will often go to isolated areas to get away from others. Some people will go into the woods, others to the desert. I believe the most accurate version of where Emmanuel was crucified was a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. And in the fourth gospel, chapter 19, verse 41, it says basically it was a garden with a tomb in it. Possibly this place was owned by one of the richer Jews who was affiliated with Pontius Pilate, and probably something of a Sadducee, or a wealthy and higher ranking member of the community. So most likely he was involved or controlled by the cult. So Christ carried his cross into this garden area, and eventually he was given something to drink like vinegar, which appeared to knock him out or kill him. In any case, the Roman soldiers said Christ appears to have died there. soon after. So let's go into some more detail about what really happens during these crucifixions. Like I said, the target will attempt to flee from their attackers and from the source of these attacks. The longer he or she resists, the greater number of cult members will be unleashed upon the target. In other words, it will be like crowds of people harassing them with the agency in the Vatican. That's what they do there. That's their big pastime. The Vatican will say, hell, they're pretty tough. We need to get more people involved to hurt them. So more cult members show up, all attempting to be the witch who finally breaks the target. That's how they get respect in their pathetic circles. So as the Christ figure gets more and more hysterical, they will often begin to walk to the highest point. Subconsciously, they will climb hills to get away from the attacks or to get closer to heavens or to God. And once they get to the highest point or the top and realize there is nowhere else to go, they will often stare at the sun. When once the sun hurt their eyes, and they subconsciously feared the sun, so they'll shield their eyes. Now at this point, at this brink between life and death, the people are no longer afraid of the sun. So they symbolically face God instead of shielding their eyes. And often they will find comfort by staring at the sun. Of course, this is not good for your eyes. Some people are blinded by this practice, or their retinas are burned and they have to wear glasses and everything. They hurt their eyes. But for thousands of years after seeing people do this, who are being crucified, this has become a ritual, and where people are commanded to look at the sun. And the biggest secret of all is what appears in front of the sun, which is called a solar disk. And it appears to be a black lens in front of the sun. And after a moment, the sun and this disk will begin to change and form these spheres, which look like three-dimensional tetrahedrons. And these spheres line up to form this giant cross of light in the sky. Now I've done my best to show you what these crosses look like with this graphic here. Many people have gone through this ritual, have seen this, and this is the cross associated with the crucifixion and one of the biggest mysteries of the Illuminati.